Today I watched The Devil's Reign, 1975. This was so much fun. A classic 70s Satan movie. Satanist movies of the 70s are a genre all to themselves apart from horror. And this is like the granddaddy of them all. It is amazing. If only for the fact that it has William Shatner, Ernest Borgnine, John Travolta, and as a little kicker, Anton LaVey himself, founder of the Church of Satan, plays a high priest. It is wonderful. Ernest Borgnine turns into a goat man twice, and then he melts. There's so much melting in this movie. So many people melt into goop. And this is the movie where the Michael Myers mask originated. William Shatner's cast of his face that was used to create his eyeless look, that became Michael Myers' mask, stripped of color. This movie has an amazing place in history, and it is definitely worth watching. The plot is very simple, easy to follow, and there's no downtime in this movie, hardly any. The first 5 minutes you see a guy melt, and then it's just like, okay, well, I guess I better do something about that. And then, crazy shit happens, and then a whole bunch of people melt. What more do you want? Alright, we're at, what is this, about the halfway point? So I'm always finding little VHS tapes at Goodwill because I still have a VCR and it's a cheap way to find really interesting odd movies. I found this one a while back that I hadn't watched called Mikey. And then today I was randomly scrolling through Clickbait and found one of those lists of most disturbing horror movies, movies that were banned in all these countries, and Mikey was on the list, as it was banned in the UK, mostly just because it came out around the same time that a 3-year-old was murdered, or there was some child who killed somebody around the same time that this movie came out, and so it was more just coincidental they decided to ban it for a while, temporarily, because it seemed in poor taste. Although it's still technically banned, but just because nobody's bothered to resubmit it to the board. I mean, as far as the gore factor or the intensity, or I wouldn't classify it a video nasty or anything like that. It's fairly tame, all things considered. I guess just the fact that it's a 9-year-old boy committing all these heinous crimes is what makes it more disturbing for some people, I suppose. That said, it was well made. The kid was a really good actor, as cheesy as some of the lines were. The kid pulled it off, and I mean he's a veteran. He was the little kid in Family Ties and Blank Check. And he was Worf's son in Star Trek, Alexander. He was in this movie. He played Mikey. He was great. Story-wise, I mean, it's a pretty predictable slasher. Really, the only novelty of it is that it's a small child. And a rather intelligent, sadistic one. He understands that you can't just be full psycho all the time. You have to play to people's sympathies, get them to trust you before you can strike. The tagline on the box is, remember, Jason and Freddy were kids once too, or something like that. It's okay. I mean, it's like if you took the beginning of the first Halloween when Michael Myers was still a little kid. Hey, and his name's Mikey. Hey, how about that? And just extended it into a full movie instead of being sent to jail or wherever, institutionalized. He was just given to a foster family to do it again. If you come across this movie and feel like watching it, go for it. But it's not really worth seeking out. You may be asking yourself, who is this handsome purple devil? And what is he doing in front of Prince Dustpan's wall of VHS? Well, I have taken his soul. It is nestled nicely in my puppet tummy. In honor of the movie, of course. Don't worry. I'll give it back soon. What did I think of the movie? Well, as a puppet myself, I'm inclined to love it. It tells the story, the origin story, of the puppet master himself, André Toulon, and how he met a 3,000-year-old wizard, was attacked by mummies, and put the souls of his friends inside his puppets, in order to fight the mummies, which killed them all. As horror movies go, it wasn't very scary. It wasn't even really violent. All the death, or nearly all the death, was done by mummy blast, which is simply the mummy going, die. And some visual effects comes out his hands, and people die. No muss, no fuss. Would I recommend this movie? Well, unless you're a huge Puppet Master fan, or have read The Disaster Artist, there's no reason to. If you have read The Disaster Artist, you might want to check it out just for Greg Sestero. As you know, he got the job because of his French accent. He was the only actor who could do one convincingly.
I give you the theatre magique where all things are possible.
But people still made fun of it anyway. Personally, I didn't think it was that bad. But the movie was overall boring and unmemorable. Except, of course, for Greg. Okay, you can have your soul back. Happy? Yeah. Yeah, I am. That was weird. But I still didn't miss a movie. Today I watched The Thing. Not the 1982 John Carpenter version. And unfortunately, no, not the Howard Hawks version either. No, this was a 2011. It's not a remake. Though it has the exact same title, there's no subtitle, there's nothing to indicate that it is a prequel. But that's what it is. Which honestly, I might have watched it sooner had I known that. It's not bad. I know I seem to say that about a lot of the movies that I've been watching, but that's kind of where it's at. These kinds of movies can't really be judged by the same set of criteria that you would others. You have to watch them because you enjoy this kind of movie. Therefore, it's harder for me to give distinct, serious criticism to some of these movies because they're just fun. And for being a more modern movie and yet a prequel of a movie from '82, it was fun. It reminded me, honestly, a lot of Alien. In fact, now that I think about it, it pretty much is an Alien knockoff, only set on Earth. There's that extra element because the alien's a shapeshifter, it can be any one of you. So you're in a group with people, everybody's aware that someone is a creature. And they could strike at any minute, but they're not going to because they're smarter than that. That's interesting. And I mean, that's what was interesting about the original one, too, but this one, I don't know. I enjoyed it for what it was. The effects weren't the best. They're as good as they could be for what happened to that movie. That movie went through a lot of turmoil during production. Originally, it was shot with a completely different beginning and a completely different ending, and most, if not all, of the effects were entirely practical. The creature was an animatronic. I want to see that movie. Instead, just weeks before release, the producers said, you know what, I don't like this, and replaced the animatronic with CG. What? Are you kidding me? So yeah, all of the practical effects were redone completely with CG. That's a damn shame. If not for that, this movie probably could have done a lot better. So today I tried to watch Bad Taste, the Peter Jackson's debut no-budget movie. Apparently my bootleg is very bad because it wasn't Bad Taste. When I turned the movie on, it was Revenge of the Living Dead Girls. Yeah. That was not what I was expecting. Took me... I should have been clued off from the very beginning as the credits that rolled were all in French. I'd heard that Bad Taste was entirely dubbed because half the movie was recorded without sound. So it made sense to me that none of the dialogue matched up. Like, the lips didn't match the vocals. And I realized, well, that's because it's supposed to be French. I enjoyed it, though. Let's get that straight. I did enjoy this movie. It was very interesting. But some more technical things, and maybe this is just my shitty bootleg, but like it had an English and a French audio track, but neither of them synced up. In many cases, it looked as if the English track matched the lip movements a lot better than the French one, but neither of them matched. So I don't know what was going on there. And this was even weirder to me, regardless of which setting I had it on, in the first few minutes of the movie, whenever it went into a sex scene, the audio was suddenly dubbed in German. I still don't have an explanation for that. But none of this has really anything to do with the quality of the movie. The movie is regarded as France's first gore film. In many ways, and this is going to sound strange, but it reminds me of Italian exploitation, like Joe D'Amato. If Joe D'Amato had made Diabolique. I know it sounds really strange, but there's a reason for that. Apparently all the French movies I watch this month have twist endings. Very surprisingly similar yet totally different twist endings. And I don't even want to give it away because it was really interesting. I don't know what to say here. Should I just give away everything, or should I just let you guys try and find it? Okay. Timestamp. I'm going to give away absolutely everything about this movie. You don't want to hear it? Skip ahead. Skip ahead. Alright, so this movie is like zombie horror softcore porn. Essentially. I mean, in the sense, I mean, it was all simulated, of course, but in the sense that it's a bit more exploitative than some movies that I've seen this month. Okay, so it's about this like factory, this lab. They handle chemicals and stuff, and they start dumping chemicals in the well, they hire some truck driver to dump barrels of this toxic waste wherever, and he chooses to dump it in the graveyard because who's it gonna hurt? Everyone there's already dead. But when he dumps that in the graveyard, 3 people who had recently been killed because of contamination from that very company and recently buried rise from their graves to seek revenge on everyone involved with that company. And I found it odd that despite the fact that some of these girls had died literally the day before, when they came out of the grave, they were like Evil Dead face. They were completely... I mean, I realized they would have been embalmed, but that wouldn't have turned them like that. It wouldn't have sunken them in quite so much. So I thought that was odd, but, you know, it's B-grade zombie schlock, so of course it's going to be bad. I let that slide. And they didn't behave like zombies either. They moved with purpose, retained full human strength. There was no weakness. They just had ugly faces and couldn't speak. But other than that, they were pretty normal. But bent on revenge. And some of the kills were pretty interesting. They used, you know, tons of gore effects, tons of blood, fake blood. A lot of quick cuts, because it's hard for them to do stabbing scenes. At one point, the zombies kill a woman by pinning her down and then stomping on her face with a high heel shoe. So the heel goes through her eye and into the brain. And that was done by doing like a whole bunch of quick cuts, you know, showing the shoe on the foot and then cut to the zombie, you know, down shot and just back and forth like that, and then hard cut right to prosthetic eye with that's just like just oozing blood. And they held on that on that fake blood for a long time. Really let that sink in. It was the first movie like this in France, so they kind of went nuts. The twist. Turns out it was all an elaborate scheme by the secretary of the CEO of the company. Very elaborate because it required duping several people, hiring others to fake their own deaths, and then to wear masks, which explains why the faces looked so bad despite them being only just recently deceased. Because they weren't actually deceased. They were just disgruntled women willing to kill for money. But their scheme got out of hand, too many people found out about the zombies, too many people believed it, and they were immediately firebombed by a police officer who just wanted to kill them. So they weren't able to get away with their scheme, and nobody ever found out that there was a scheme. And it ends just like with Psycho, just like with Diabolique, with a warning saying, do not tell your friends how the movie ends. Like I just did. Well, it's my birthday. Yay! As a present to myself, I wanted to watch another RiffTrax. So I did. I know it's 2 RiffTrax in a week, but they're still fun. They're still legit horror movies. They just have some levity added to them. And they're already bad enough to begin with, so Ice Cream Man. I mean, come on. Clint Howard as a sociopathic, mentally ill Ice Cream Man. It's beautiful. I remember watching this movie as a kid. It was on Svengoolie. It was like a, I don't know if you're familiar with that or not. I think it's a local thing. Sort of like an Elvira or, one of those shows where they show a horror movie, but there's like jokes in between, and sometimes they add sound effects and things to it. Kind of odd, but you see some interesting movies there, and I remember this one as a kid. I remember being a little bit freaked out by it as a kid, actually. Particularly the part where he sticks the dog in the meat grinder. That bothered me. And the eyeball. Or not even the eyeball. He, takes an eyeball and then, uses a cherry pitter, I guess, to get the lens out or something. But it still has... It didn't really work, because it shows him doing that, and you can see the actual design of the eyeball is still here. He discards that and puts whatever was in the middle and sticks it into an ice cream cone to give to a cop. And then the cop is seen chewing on an eyeball in his mouth, but we just saw the eyeball get thrown out, so I don't know what that... It looked kind of cool, but if you really think about what happened in that scene, it doesn't work. Because that's what's so important in a movie like Ice Cream Man. The RiffTrax was great. The jokes were spot on. A lot of jokes about Clint Howard, about movies that he's been in, or how he's been disinvited to parties with his brother and stuff like that. They're the kind of jokes that you can't just relate to somebody. You have to enjoy them in the moment. So if you have a RiffTrax account, or if you've never heard of them, go to their website, check it out. I highly recommend their riff on Ice Cream Man. It's a lot of fun.